All right. Those of you who have been able to make it live, thank you so much for coming. For those of you watching on record, naughty, 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 you are in trouble. We are privileged to have Tom Noble, who is head of 0 to 1 no-code building at Mohara, a venture builder, here to give us his thoughts on no-code and low-code building. So excited to have you here, Tom. Over to you, my friend.
Great to be here. So yeah, the talk I'm going to go through, I'm just going to give a bit of an introduction to what no-code is, a bit of a deep dive into how it all works. Then we'll look at a few projects I've done, and then sort of how you can get to grips with it. But I think the best thing would be to get through that quickly and go to Q&A so I can really help. The biggest value that I can bring to you guys is you tell me what you're trying to do, and I'll tell you the quickest way to get there. Because it's not only, spend 10K on an MVP. There's some ways that you can do it so much quicker. If you're building certain things, go build a WhatsApp group if you want to start a community. When we say no code, it doesn't have to be a no code build. It's just how to get there without code at all. So I'm Tom. So why am I qualified to talk to you about this? So I've done a lot in my entrepreneurial career. I started out, I ran a sportswear business for a while. COVID put an end to that. And then I moved into the world of VC. I was there for about a year. And then I moved on to become a freelance venture builder and a business validator. So saw a lot of businesses in my time there. And also through the sportswear business, sort of got to grips with what businesses actually are and how to run operations. After that, I went through an accelerator, somewhat similar to yourselves. It was called Antler, if you've heard of it. Then the business we created through that, decided not to go ahead with it because of all the work I'd done in validations, figured out no one actually wanted the thing, or not in the way that I wanted it. And then after that, decided to start a no-code agency and join with Mohara pretty quickly afterwards. So through all of that, I've seen so many small businesses all at the start, the beginning phase. Running a large business and, beyond like £100,000, who knows? That's not for me. But what I'm good at is that 0 to 1 phase. So that's what I focus on. So the whole of my career, I've been focusing on these businesses. And when I was at the VC firm, that was when I sort of got into no code. I'd learned all about business, but I really wanted to dig into what no code was. I decided to learn to code, tried for 2 days, gave up straight away. And that's when I moved into no code because it was just so much easier. So, just pop on to the next slide. So I'll just say next slide, and then you move to the next slide. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. So I head up the 0 to 1 department at Mohara. Traditionally, at the beginning stage of businesses, these startups typically are individuals rather than companies. So there's always a smaller budget. So that's why agencies tended to stay away. But now we have all like AI, all these no-code tools. The build costs have come down quite a lot. So now agencies can actually come and exist in this space, which is just why we exist. So in terms of like 100K coded build, we provide something that's like 5 to 10, 15, that sort of realm. And in terms of what Underdog do, you guys are at the beginning, you're proving out this thing, going through validation. And then when that's all done, then you come to a company like Mohara 0 to 1, and we'll build that proof of concept or MVP beyond it, and then get users involved. So next slide. So the whole talk is about no code for MVP. And no code, in a nutshell, it's a catch-all term for like a suite of tools that allow you to create these tech products without the need for code. And the aim of this talk is to tell you about what no code is. Right, next slide. So no code isn't great just because it replaces the need to write code. It's great because it's this incredibly efficient way of creating products fast. We don't love the products. We don't love them just because they're the absence of code. What it is we love the ability to get there quicker, this shortcut from getting a product to market. And if you go to an agency, the shorter time, it means there's less of a cost. So if you look at a technical product, and I don't know how many of you know coding at all, I'm assuming that everyone's a non-technical founder because that's just easier for this talk. Since the dawn of technology, we had all these web apps and websites, and people would code every single part of them. You got the headers, the footers, the margins. Everything was written in hard code. But now with no code, we don't have to do that. All of these things are pre-built components that you can then put on pages rather than having to write the code. So the way that most of these tools work is you have pre-made elements that are actually code behind the scenes, and then you organize them within the guidelines of these platforms. So no code really, it's just an advancement in a long line of advancements. And when you speak to coders, a lot of them copy and paste and take from GitHub. So they're sort of operating in the same way, taking pre-made components and putting them together. But this no-code way, it allows you to do things without knowing how the code works, so you can build them visually. So next slide. Yeah, it's just a progression of software development where we have more automation in place so that it can create the code rather than actually writing it. And the code still exists behind the scenes. It's as I said, this visual development process. And this no-code movement's been coming on for a while. I mean, the earliest websites were built in HTML, and that's pure code. Then we moved to GeoCities, which is half code, more than half code, and then you'd have templates as well. Then we moved to WordPress, and WordPress was a lot of templates with a bit of code on the end, and now we're at Webflow. And Webflow is pretty much all no code. You can go in and have a look behind the scenes and do some code, but it's very much no code. So we sort of, in terms of websites, we're slowly getting there. So next slide. So why would you want to use no code? Quite simply, it's the quickest route to market because it's so much cheaper. There's less code, which means less labor, and that means less cost, and that just lowers the price of everything, and it means you can ship these things in real time. You can get one developer, or you can learn yourself. It's up to you. For me, it took 3 months to learn the products, and I just started building one straight away and went off and launched it. But while you can get a developer as well. You can find one on Upwork or go to an agency. But you can build these things, and it's usually teams of one, and you're there speaking to this builder, and then you can iterate in real time, iterate and test, make all these changes however you want. And also, it's amazing for validation. You create a hypothesis. You say, I want to test this. I want to go out and figure if it works, and then you build it and test it straight away, rather than having to go through a full coded build with a large team. It's just so much quicker and so much easier. So next slide. Why wouldn't you use no code? So no code, it's great for certain things. So when we started out in 0 to 1 at Mohara, we did look to take on larger projects, but the aims of the entrepreneurs are always quite high, and you want to really focus on that MVP. So MVP is where you're focusing on the core concept of what it is, and what I'm focusing on the users. And this is where no code is amazing, because you can build these really simple things, focus on them, and ship them quite quickly. So if you're looking at a complex build, typically these tools don't work well. You're looking at, if you're building something quite large, you'd have multiple users on it. The server will be getting quite big, and the server belongs to the platforms, and you have no control, and then the databases get quite large. You don't want to go for anything complex if you're trying to build on no code. You want one thing that's simple, and then potentially you could scale with that. Another problem is cutting edge technologies should be left to traditional code. So because no code is pre-made blocks of technology, if you're looking to do something that's out the cutting edge, those pre-made blocks aren't going to be there. So that's when you have to resort to traditional code. And then another reason is, do you actually need to build anything anyway? We were going through the test of a communities platform. He wanted to build his own app, and we said, why don't you just build a community on WhatsApp? And he said, okay, makes sense. And then the next stage of that would be build a little user interface, but still use WhatsApp. You don't need to actually build something. In most cases, if you want to go off and test something, you can do it with stuff that's out there and super simple. So if you want to run a finance app, just run it off Excel to start with, but maybe with a questionnaire on the front. Like, there are always ways for you to do it as simple as possible. Everyone tries to overcomplicate it. So sometimes the reason to not use no code is you don't actually need to. And next slide.
I'm on technical considerations now. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. Technical considerations. So there are some problems with it as well, which comes down to code ownership. These things often have the code behind the scenes. The scalability isn't there because the databases don't go far enough. Security can be an issue because you would say that you can't. The customization isn't there, so you can't go in and edit it. And then also customization in terms of the features that are on the platform. But in general, if you're looking to build something that's a simple MVP, none of this should matter to you. You build this is just a test. Do you even need the code anyway? Probably not. If you create this thing on no code, you then have this an example that you could just hand on to someone who codes who could build it anyway. In terms of scalability, someone said to me, what happens if it gets to 10,000 users and breaks? If it gets to 10,000 users, you've got an amazing problem on your hand. You can go off and raise on that so simply. Security, again, you've got you've got a team in the no-code platform that is dedicated to security. So you've got your own security team built in. And then customization, how much customization do you really need? If you're trying to do something cutting edge, you probably should be looking at code. But if you want to create some sort of design that's so custom, you're not going to get that. It just needs to be good enough. And that's where no code really shines. So next slide. This is basically a view of what no code looks like versus code. So the image on the right, that's no code, and the image on the left, that's the coded build. And both of these, if shipped at the end, would create the same product. The one on the right, it's clearly much easier to use than the one on the left. I'm biased because I don't do coding. So if you were to change something on the right, you just click on a box and then drag and drop it. But if you were to move something on the left, then you'd actually have to go in and you have to amend this code. So one is considerably easier to use than the other. So if we go to the next slide, this is what most of the platforms look like. So you have in the center, this is all the platforms sort of operate this way. You have the design page where you would see whatever the customer's going to see. And then on the side, you have all these panels where you would go in and you'd make a change to the padding or what have you. So all of the tools are very visual so that you see whatever they see. And then behind the scenes, sometimes there's a lot more in terms of the database, but we'll get onto that in a second. So next slide. So what can you build? We've been through this already. So if you want to build something infinitely scalable, it's not ideal. If you want to, so databases aren't functional at high volumes. If you want to do full customization, again, not ideal. You want to go for feature-heavy apps, not ideal. Cutting-edge technology, not ideal. But if you want to build a simple product that could go on to last for years, then this is exactly what you want to do. But you've got to keep it really simple. If you're creating something that does one thing, this can scale because the database doesn't get complex. So keep it simple. If that's the one thing you take away from this talk, it's no code. If you're using it, you want to focus on simple things, getting them out there, iterating, and then moving on. And the MVPs, again, these are really useful. So next slide. So there's loads of no-code platforms out there, and they're being made all the time, but these are the big ones. So if you want to work with data, you want to look at Airtable. And Airtable is basically Excel on steroids, and you can run automations off it as well. If you want to create mobile apps, the best one is Flutterflow. If you want to create web apps, it's Bubble. If you want to create visually informational-based websites, that's Webflow. If you want to create forms, Typeform. And if you want to make automations, you use Make. But the three ones that we use at Mohara are Flutterflow, Bubble, and Webflow. But we're moving away from Webflow because it's sort of not really what we want to get into anymore with websites. We want to focus on these web apps and mobile apps that have databases underneath. So Flutterflow is the one that we use primarily, and this is for mobile apps. And the reason we use this is you can actually export some of the code at the end, which makes it really useful if you want to move on to other projects. And it's got so much. It's one of the more advanced platforms, and so we use Bubble and Flutterflow because they're so advanced. Like, they've been around for so long, they got so much money going into them that it's pretty safe to say that they'll be around for a while because we don't want to have to learn too many tools. And also, we want to be using these platforms that have a lot of focus on them, and they're developing features all the time because the features are aligned. If the features are being built on these platforms, it means that you have access to them, so you can build these amazing things. So we want to be working with the best. So there's any two that you should go and learn if you want to build for yourself, it would be Bubble and Flutterflow. So next slide. I've highlighted a few, but there are so many platforms out there. And we use those top three because they have the functionality, but they're also quite complex. But we have teams of people who know how to use these. It took me 3 months to learn Bubble and then Flutterflow 1 month because they're all quite similar. But it's something you need to think about. Do you actually want to go out and learn this? And also, do you actually need to? Because the common rule is if the functionality is high on the platform, then the complexity is going to be really high as well. So if you were going to build a website, how functional do you need it to be? It depends upon the purpose. If you want to build a website that's all singing or dancing and can do everything, then you're looking at something that's more complex, like Webflow. But if you want to just make a landing page, you'd go something that's quite simple, like Framer. Framer, it costs $29, and it would probably take you I think you could probably build a good website in a day or 2 days if you knew what you're doing, probably a week if you want to learn. But if you want to build a website on Webflow, it's going to take you a lot longer. The Framer website, it would just be a landing page. You couldn't really go further than that. But with Webflow, you can put e-commerce, blogs, all of it. It's the same with a web app. If you want to get something out there that's just quite simple, you go for something like Softer. But if you want to build something really complex, you'd go for Bubble. Same with mobile apps, you'd go for Adalo if it was really cheap, really simple, sorry. And if you want to go for something that's quite complex, you go for Flutterflow. So Flutter is on the language Flutter, and DraftBit is the React Native equivalent. We use Flutterflow just because it's been around longer and it seems to be getting better, and DraftBit is a little bit behind. And again, we want to use the best tools. And if you want to make a marketplace, you'd use something like ShareTribe, and it's a more complex Bubble. But there are loads of tools out there that are relatively simple, and it all depends on what you want to make. If you want to make your own e-commerce store, some people want to go to Webflow, they want to create their own, they want to make it fully custom. But when you've got Shopify out there for $29, I mean, you should go there straight away. So what should you build? Next slide. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. What should you build? It depends what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to validate a product, what do you need to do? Do you want to go off and build a website or a web app? It depends. Like, what does that validation actually look like? If you're just creating something, you want to go off and you want to make a waiting list, perhaps. If you want to make a waiting list, why don't you just go, if on the previous slide, for functionality, we want something quite simple, you just build a landing page on Framer. So if you want to validate the product, you don't need to go that far. Just get a landing page on Framer and build a waiting list. If you want to create wireframes to show a design to a customer, just create a Figma design. You don't really need to make anything. If you want to create an interactive product to help you sell, how far do you want to go with that? If it's super complex, maybe you look at Bubble. But if it's quite simple, maybe you look at something like Softer. If you want to create a proof of concept, how far do you need to go? Again, do you need to create something quite complex using Bubble? Or would you go and just create an integration between, I don't know, a Flutterflow and WhatsApp to create a community? And again, with a functional MVP, how far do you need to go? And if you want to make an ongoing product, what do you need to do? So you need to really think about what you need to do and what you're trying to achieve before you actually go and build anything. Next slide. So this is a quick look at if you want to learn to do it yourself. So when you're building, there are three components to a project. There's the design, and I'm looking specifically at web apps because that's what we do. You want to know how to design the workflows and the database. So the design is everything you see. It's the user interface. The workflows are the buttons that you'd press, and the database is what sits underneath. So if we took Facebook, for example, the design is the user interface that we see. The workflows are the buttons we press, and the database sat underneath would be users, friends, all that sort of thing, and the content. So we need to understand these three things. And along the top, we've got the platforms. So if you're trying to create something like for Airtable that would be an automation, you don't really need to look at the design. You just need to know the workflows in the database. And if you're looking at something like Typeform, you're only really trying to get workflows. Same with Make. And if you're doing something that's just design-based and you don't want any workflows or any database involved, you just want a nice-looking website, you'd look at something like Webflow. So you'd probably look at this and say, well, why don't you use Bubble for everything? And the answer to that is, well, sometimes if you don't need a database and you don't need workflows, just use Webflow instead. There's no point learning all these different tools. So next slide. So we've got two examples here of projects that we made at Mohara. Sorry, one of them I made before Mohara. And I'm just going to talk through what they are and what I did with them. So this is Sports Cal. The point of this was to create a searchable calendar so I'm an NFL fan, so we had all the calendars for these sports teams. I would click on the Arizona Cardinals and I would download their entire calendar. So what we did here was, this is made on Bubble. We filled the database with all of the calendars. So because it's an MVP, we didn't automate it. I went and found all of the calendars for all of the sports teams in the NFL, and I put them into a database and set it up so that if I clicked on it, it would then download the calendar. So it was a series of automation, a series of workflows behind the scenes that would then add it to my calendar. So it's somewhat simple, but also a little bit complex as well. So just an example of what can be built. Next slide. And this is a project we made with Mohara quite recently. So this is a news website for kids. So it's got a full blog on it. It's you can go and you can search. You can look at it. It's supposed to be just like a news website, and you can't see on this because I can only put one slide in. But the functionality we got out of it was amazing, and they're signing up users straight away. And this is a tool that cost around 10 grand to make, rather than 50 grand that they were quoted to another agency. So all this stuff is possible. We got a map there that just pulsating dots, and you can click on the articles and you go off to read the articles as well. So it's something that was pretty complicated, but it's all possible with no code. One of the biggest things is everyone always seems to think that no code can't do much, but there's so much that it can do. You should always think about it can do what code can do, but you're just not going to get that complete customization, the security, getting the code at the end. But it's really close, and it's far beyond what people think. So next slide. We're coming to an end. So basically, no code's an advancement in the long line of advancements. It's still based on code. The code is just hidden behind the scenes. A lot of platforms, but only a few key ones. Loads of different ones, but lots of different levels of complexity. It's ideal for idea validation. And if you want to become a no-coder, there are 3 things you need to learn. And I think the next slide is the last slide. Yeah, there we go. So have a go at building something and let me know how it goes.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate that. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions from many of the people in the room. Just a quick one from me, though. Like, what really resonated was the fact that actually a lot of you guys needn't be thinking about building anything technical. Forget about full fat code. Don't even worry about low code and even no code. There are other ways of proving that people want what the heck you've got to offer. You don't need a technical product yet, for many of you.
Well, when I started building, and this is the problem that so many builders will have, you'll have an idea and you'll sit down in a dark room and build it for 2 weeks. You won't speak to anyone, and then you'll come out with this thing and no one wants it. So why not just go off and test it first? With communities is a great example because there's Slack. Just use Slack. All you're trying to prove is that people want to use this thing that you're trying to create. They can use Slack. They already know how to use Slack, so most likely they're going to use it. And then when you've got them on your Slack group, well, then you've caught them in this in a list, so you can then market to them at the end. So you don't always need to make stuff.
Really,
which agency I shouldn't say, but you should always build stuff, but you really don't need to.
So I think the reality is, once they've proven that they've got demand validation and people want what they've got to offer, then that is when it's time to build.
Yeah.
Get to that proof point, you don't need that. And we've kind of rejigged things a little bit for cohort 3, which is coming up. And I think I've mentioned it to most of the people on Catapult currently, but those of you joining us from our Launchpad Investor Readiness Program, there's going to be a 1K a month minimum in terms of revenue. That's what we're looking for people to graduate from Catapult. Are you actually making cash money in a non-scalable way with a product that maybe doesn't even really exist in the truest technical sense? And those of you on Catapult currently, start thinking ahead about that as we enter that second stage, which is all around demand validation.
So we've got a client going through and they're creating a marketplace for information services. And I said to them, well, have you got revenue yet? And they said, no, they don't. But then he said, well, actually, he does a bit of freelance work doing the exact same thing the platform does. And I said, well, technically, you sort of do have revenue because you're doing it as a consultancy. Why don't you just scale that consultancy? Because you can use that tech later on to make life easier, to automate everything. But at the beginning, just learn. You want to learn everything that the client wants, and then you can then automate. But just stick to what's not scalable, because you'll learn and you can also start growing it.
Definitely love that. Before we move on to questions from the floor, do you want to talk about Nebula at all, Tom? Tom's got a really, really cool thing that
I'll mention it. It's basically, I'm starting this little incubator that's designed to figure out your value proposition, build a landing page, run some ads, see if it works. That's it. Don't build anything. Maybe build a landing page, but that's all you want to do. You want to run the ads to see if it works, and that's it. That's more B2C. And in B2B, book customer calls through LinkedIn, and then just have a chat with them. Don't build anything. There's no point. Because if you've got these the validation metrics that say they're waiting lists, you can fill that up. You can go straight to an investor and get money. I was at a pitch event and someone had a waiting list of 400 people on it, and everyone wanted to talk to them. They'd also gone and built something, so they wasted 200K, but it was that waiting list. That's what people were after, because they'd proved there was a need.
Yeah. And it's what we say time and time again, right? Before you build, prove you can sell. However that looks, whether you're B2B, B2C, if you're building a marketplace, a physical product, whatever it might be, the framework remains the same. We're looking for that demand validation first and foremost. Ideally, cash in hand, money in the bank, before we go out and build. Please, 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 if any of you spend 200 grand on a prototype or an MVP, I'm gonna track you down and tell you off. There was nothing to that. I'll give one more quick anecdote as well. A company that I invested in probably back in 2012 actually it was. 2011 maybe, flipping echo. I'm getting old. They had a product, and it was a team of 3. One was a little bit technical, one was more commercial, and one kind of sat in between the two. They built a cool app, and probably 2,000 users who were using it. I was one of them. I loved it, and I put money in. They then got poached from Paris, where they were based, to Silicon Valley by a big incubator there. And we were like, happy days, things are going to go fantastic. This is great news. I won't name the incubator. I won't name it, at least not in public. But they had tons of really big shot Silicon Valley people behind them. They went dark for about 6 months for the entire length of this accelerator, and built in private. They then relaunched their app, and it bombed. They lost their entire user base because no one wanted what they had built. But everyone was loving, whilst they'd been going dark, people were still using the app. So they actually increased whilst they went dark, and then once they launched, they collapsed. So the importance of, even if you've got that early validation, your customer discovery never ends, right? You've got your finger on the pulse, listen, talk to your customers, and adapt to what they want. Don't do what they did. That could have been the next Instagram. Still kicking myself. Any questions from the floor? Tom mentioned, for those of you who join a little bit later, Tom mentioned at the beginning that if there is anything that you guys are looking to build that you want to share with him, he's happy to tell you how he would look to demand validate that using low code, no code, or nothing technical at all. So please put your hands up. You know, you guys know how to do that. There's the little hand icon at the bottom. All right, we've got a clap from Michael Bateson, but a raised hand from Robert Smart.
Yeah, it looks like I beat Michael to the punch by pressing the right button. So, hey, Tom, thanks for going through this. In the simplest iteration of what I'm trying to do, I want to list every gig everywhere, every gig in London to start with, and there's no one database that has all of that. So I suspect there'll be an element of either manually inputting it or some sort of web scraping. But yeah, curious to know, is there a simple way of doing that, pulling in feeds from 20, 30 different venues and organizing the data?
If you know them, you just ask them for it. That's all I can say, really. Maybe you'd web scrape for it, but that's all about getting the information together, and that's more of a back end thing than anything else. I don't know whether you could use AI or some sort of tool to go off and look for it, but if you have if you have the channels with those gig venues, then that would be the way. If you have all the data together, great, you can build a really nice tool with it, but getting data is always the hardest thing to do. So
that's sorry, I'm sure it's only one question, but so let's say hypothetically I got that from there, because probably could get it from a few for like an MVP or a prototype. So having that data, then like what would be, is this a really simple thing? What would be a recommendation for how it's laid out or how you get it on the platform? And which low code would you use for something like that?
Well, it sounds pretty database heavy.
Okay.
Would it want to be an app or a web app?
Both, but probably a phone app would be that would be the first.
Does it need to be a phone app?
It doesn't need to be. I'm just trying to think of what's the
because at
end user be most likely to do.
Because at MVP level, you could just it could be as simple as build a website and then just make it responsive so that people can see it. Because then build the website like a web app, maybe on Bubble, and then when it goes on the phone, the responsiveness will go down. Then you get both of them. Rather than if you wanted to do just a web app, a mobile app, sorry, I'd say go for Flutterflow, and you'd want to be using one of those two platforms because it's going to be very database intensive.
Yeah. What did you say? Sorry, Flutterflow. What was the name of them?
Flutterflow.
Flutterflow. Okay.
Yeah. When you have these other apps like Softer or Adala, they look good, but they have low functionality. But what you're doing is because you really work around that database, you'll need something pretty custom, and those two, that would do it. But once you've got that and you set it up, it'll be relatively simple. You can set it up to, if you have this database full of all the gigs going on, as long as you'll have a bit of a problem in sort of organizing it properly, because everyone uses a different database, everyone uses different tables. Once that's organized, you can just pull it all through and show it all. And then the way these are set up is if you set one thing up, you set them all up. So you can just scroll through them quick. So I would say look at those two.
Incredibly helpful.
But you'll need, a lot of work will be needed on the database side of that.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this has been I've been thinking how on earth to get it done, and your question kind of just asked for the data. Like, always, Occam's razor, right? The simplest thing. So, yeah.
Like they give it, you got to figure that one out. Because if they're trying to, if that's their IP, they might not, and then you might be looking at web scraping.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think I could I don't want to take a down a route, but I think I could probably get it from one or two, and that would be enough just to prove that I could do it. I'm thinking, but really, genuinely very useful.
Yeah, sure. Well, venues want bums on seats, so you can say you can get them more. They'll love it.
That's the goal. Yeah.
And don't underestimate the power of crowdsourcing. So getting your audience to go out and find it for you. And honestly, that Mechanical Turk vibe, as in getting EA or something for $4 an hour, who's offshore, who can just do it for you.
Oh yeah,
I've seen that.
This is like, I don't know why I've been overthinking this. It's I'm sure that's not what today is about, but this is like the simplest thing. I've been thinking I need sort of contraptions and all sorts of gizmos to do this.
A lot of things have been done before. So when I built that sports calendar, a lot of sports teams had them on their own websites. I just went and got them, and I just put it in a nicer place. That was all I did.
And centralized it, right? Made it centralized. Happy days. All right, cheers, Rob. Next up was Bishoy.
I'm happy to let Michael go first. I know he's had his hand up for a while.
I think he was clapping. You're on. There's literally a queue, so you're on.
Right, fair enough. Thanks for that, Tom. Really enjoyed that. I had a question. I currently have a website that I run on WordPress. I've been running for a while on there now. Didn't like kind of the lack of customization on it, so I tried Elementor through WordPress, and that's been good. Still not great, but it's still better than before. Having heard about Webflow, I want to give it a shot. Do you think, though, kind of from your experience, is it worth transferring sites over and that kind of stuff? Like, is it dangerous transferring sites over from one platform to another, or is it fairly straightforward, no risk, that kind of stuff?
Well, you'd have to rebuild it, but like the question is why? Why do you want to change? Is it good enough, or is it annoying you that it's not good enough, or do customers care? Because if the customers don't care, do you need to change?
It's more annoying me. Like, every time I see something, I want to tweak this. Oh, how do I do? Oh, I can't do that. Oh, okay, well, that's great. I'm just thinking long term, kind of. I want to be able to do what I want. And
Webflow is good, but it really depends. It really depends. Elementor is good. So is Webflow. They both do a very similar thing in terms of SEO. They're both great. Do you have a shop on it?
No,
Is it just a blog?
it's a blog. Yeah.
It depends how annoyed customers are with it. It sounds like you're probably fine. You might be overthinking it. But in terms of changing, yeah, you could just rebuild it. That's as long as you could, just take the template of what it is on WordPress and flip it over. But then you do have to go through and learn Webflow again. So just make sure it's actually worth it to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but like I won't be losing any data or anything like that from transferring over or anything like that.
I'm not that great at SEO, but I would look into SEO because you don't want to wreck your SEO.
Okay,
That's the biggest thing.
sounds good. Thank you.
I'll just jump in quickly because I kind of know what you do, Bishoy, and I've also been through a similar thought process for one of my businesses. A hand-coded website. This is a word of warning to you guys who are looking for technical co-founders. My founder at the time was technical, built the entire website, SEO optimized and all the rest of it. Great, happy days. Then he wanted to leave, so I bought him out, and his server went down and the entire website went down with it. And I was incapable of rebuilding that site. So I had to use, in my case, Shopify and rebuild from scratch in a, I guess, WYSIWYG low-code way. So beware of overcomplicating things up front when there's no need, especially if you are the non-technical co-founder to someone who is technical. For you, Bishoy, don't overthink it, bro. You have much, much, much more important things to be worrying about than redoing your old blog site. There is a ton of other stuff that you can be doing. Follow the money. You know what is working for you. Go and follow that money, and you don't need any sort of technical solution for that beyond the you're using.
But I completely get it. I've run websites and I've changed them because it's also very dangerous. If you know how to change a website, you'll change it every day. And you have so much time, and no one ever cared what it looked like anyway. They weren't there for that, that header being blue rather than cyan. So it's also a little bit dangerous if you know what you're doing.
For sure. And I think the thing that Tom said that really resonated with me was, is this a you problem or do your customers care? And your customers do not care, almost guaranteed, right? So, if it's bugging you, well, suck it up, right? Go out and make a ton of money, and then you can pay someone to build a website for you. That's what I want for you, Bishoy.
Cool. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Mike Bateson, finally. He's in. Whilst you try and figure out how to unmute yourself, I'm going to read out a question from Sam from TT Luxury Cat Towers, who says, "Hey there, apologies, I have no camera or mic. I need a new laptop." I know the feeling.
There we are.
This is great and really enjoyed the presentation. How do you feel this would work for our new business, which is events-based? Our community, information and social channels will be important to us to build and prove demand. Additionally, we're looking to raise funds from trade sponsors, so it will be important that we can promote their profiles and show the event is coming in order to secure funds. What would you suggest? If that's not enough information, I can kind of fill in the blanks, Tom.
Yeah.
So Sam spent, I think, 13 plus years, maybe even longer, in the kind of pedigree cat world, and has got this business, the Luxury Cat Towers, which is a physical products business for cats. But now with her partner, Peter, they're looking to build eventually a massive in-person event. So the ultimate cat show for cat lovers in the UK. And in order to do that, they need to secure venues, they need to sell tickets, they need to get exhibitors, and they need to sell sponsorships. So I guess she's asking, how do they prove? This is probably a landing page, I guess, isn't it? Like
it doesn't sit too well in no code. Just make a nice website. That's all you can do. In terms of validation, whether that would work, what do the dream customers look like? I assume there'll be people that would buy tickets, cat lovers, and then you've also got exhibitors. So you'd probably want to build a landing page and then run Facebook ads based on the event to see whether people would actually come. And all you're really looking for is you're not trying to sell tickets. You're trying to get clicks through to the landing page and then potentially sign up to the waiting list. Or you could put a buy a ticket button, and then you would just see who clicks the button, automate it so that, or you look on Google Analytics, see who goes to the page. And then with the exhibitors, you'd do B2B calls, and you'd just go out and speak to exhibitors and see whether they'd actually pay for it. That's how I would do that.
I totally agree with that. I think there's a landing page which credentializes you and has got pretty pictures and links to your social channels. And again, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? There are either plugins for your website, or you can use Luma for this call, or Eventbrite to sell tickets. You don't need to have your own proprietary platform. So I think a big part, or this at least is how I do it when it comes to kind of no code or low code, is I figure out which solutions are best in class depending on what it is I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to sell tickets, it's probably Eventbrite. And I can just literally create a landing page with a link to Eventbrite. And that's how I sell. They take care of managing the ticket numbers, of sending the tickets out to the customers, of taking payments and all the rest of it. And I don't even need anything more than that.
And if you've got a lot of followers on social media, just put a poll out. People don't do this at all, and it blows my mind. If they've got a load of followers, like a friend of mine's got a clothing business that has 15,000 followers. She was trying to decide which color to make her hoodie. She said, put a poll. Just ask your customers, or say, if we ran an event, would you come? 50 might say yes, then send them a link to a ticket, then just see if they actually click it. Don't put a ticket at the end, just see if they click it, just so that actually there's a commitment to it. So then you're building up what I would say is a validation criteria of, are people actually going to buy these tickets? Then you know whether people would come to the event. And if people are going to, those are the most important. It's the attendees, because if you've got attendees, trade sponsors will come. So it's all about figuring out whether people actually would come to this event if you put it on.
Spot on. And Sandra just put something in the chat. She said Wix has got a cheap events plugin which generates tickets with a QR code for you automatically. So if you're using Wix, happy days. If not, I would just use Eventbrite or something similar, at least for the first.
Be careful, because if you do create tickets and you sell them, you have to do an event. But if you put a broken link in that goes off and has just some sort of event at the end of it, event being a Facebook event. So what am I trying to say? It gives some sort of information digitally that someone clicked that button, then you never actually need to sell a ticket. So if someone clicks on a broken link, they'll just think, oh, okay, it's not, they won't think too much of it. But if they send a signal to you that that happened, then you've got a commitment there. And if you get 200 commitments to it, then 200 people have tried to buy a ticket, then you can go and make the event. Say, sorry, the link didn't work. But if you actually put them as tickets, then you're just going to start taking money. Then you've actually got a few problems of actually having to do the event. So just validate it first.
Yeah. Or refund them. But we'll talk about that in part 2 of the program. All right, cool. Rich, there you are.
I just, I think Michael's in space, so it's probably too far away to speak. But on what was called Webflow, I learned Webflow. It's very good, very complicated to do lots of interaction, whatever. But then you've got to pay for the hosting, and you've got to pay for the program. So it's a double whammy if you do have a Webflow site. So you've got to build that cost into your, into your business. I know that we've spent money anyway, but it's not just like, oh, you learn Webflow and then it's done. They get it both ways. They double dip on their customers. So you got to either pass the customer, you got to pass on the cost to, if you're making websites for someone else. But if you're making them for yourself, you've got to expect to pay twice for what you can get elsewhere for once. That's one thing I learned with Webflow. It's a nice learning curve, and I got more value out of learning how to make the behind what is the website for than learning Webflow itself. But that's what I say. But my question really is, I do have a technical product. It will use, if I make it, a radar. So I'm going to possibly use Edge Impulse, which is a kind of no-code AI system. I don't know if you know Edge Impulse. It's kind of, you can do data in, it'll do something with the data, and then an output. It seems like a nice, and you can use it for free to begin with. So you can, you can use a mobile phone to measure the accelerometer, and it'll do things on screen, and then you can have an output. So it's a sort of no code or low code AI, which is good for me. And I'm just thinking, if I was going to make, and I can make an MVP probably for about 100 quid. I can buy a radar, I can buy another bit, I can learn a little bit of programming, and I can use Edge Impulse to program it. But I'm thinking, you're suggesting getting customers before I build an MVP, even if it's only £100. That's what you're recommending? Yeah, try and get a customer base, because
it depends upon what it is, really. Because if it's something new like that, maybe you would need to create something. But I would say for that, maybe do a crowdfunder.
Right.
Then you'd know, because it sort of does lend itself to that sort of model, because it's something new.
Yeah,
it depends on who your customers are, really. If you've got customers who, I don't know, are on Facebook, running Facebook ads does work quite well, but it all depends upon what it is and like what a successful validation looks like.
Yeah, that's obviously I'm on the beginning of the learning process with the Underdog. So getting my ideal customer profile, etc., etc. I'm at the beginning of learning that, the journey. But I
Who is your ideal customer profile? Who is your ideal customer profile? Do you know?
Yeah, that's a big improvement on just I've got an idea, 100%. So
do you know who the customer?
Yeah. Sorry?
Do you know who the ICP will be?
There's many pain points. If I was going to build a, pain reliever, the product is relieving pain. There's many pains it could relieve. At the moment, I'm focusing on people who can't sleep, who can't fall asleep, who can't get into that mode of sleeping, that theta state that you get in before you sleep. So when they go to bed, their mind hasn't switched off and they don't go into sleep. That could be a great customer profile. So that's the one I'm going with at the moment. But it might be, other pain points in a similar sense. Yeah. I should say my background is I was a hypnotist. So I'm used to putting people into trance, and I've done a lot of training where we're tested. Can you put someone into trance with an EEG? You can then see the EEG. Can you do it? So yeah, I'm trying to, build a business out of that.
I mean, what you're trying to prove, really, you don't need to prove whether people, want to get to sleep better, because everyone does. That's pretty much been proven. You want to prove whether you sell a tool that can do that. So what you want to do, really, I suppose, is figure out what the benefits of the product are, and then run product ads to actually sell the thing. But it does sound like if you're close to making one, you test it, and then you want to figure out whether it can scale, how far it can go. And by creating a prototype and figuring out whether that works, you can then take the responses, I guess, and then put them on a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad, and then try and sell the thing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Good advice. Thanks a lot.
From literally hearing it for 2 minutes, I would need to know more. But if you're trying to sell a product, you need to, the channels that you would be, figure out what channels you're going to sell it on. I mean, I'm just going for Instagram ads because that's where most stuff's sold. If you have this, you figure out what the product is, and you can actually get some testimonials based on it. Go advertise on the channel that you're planning on selling it on, and then you'll see whether it will actually sell. Because you could go off and buy 100,000 of these and put them in stock, and you do the exact same thing, just do it without the stock. Then you save yourself a load of money, and then you'll know. 50% of people might buy them. Amazing. No one might buy them. So you'd find out straight away what's going to happen. But remember, you probably put when you're doing these ads, don't put 20 quid on, put like 500 to 700, because you really want to wait and see what happens, because these things optimize themselves as time goes on. So if it doesn't look good at the beginning, that's because you put the ads out to, I don't know what your target market would be, but eventually it would sort of focus itself. So don't, if you're thinking you're going to make millions from this, it's okay to probably blow 1,000 or so on ads, just trying to prove the concept, because don't waste the rest of the money.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. Now we're going to try a bit of old school technology. I'm going to call on my mobile phone. Okay. Can you hear that? Oh,
Hello.
There are, guys. I'm trying to use these new short-term things, but anyways, what else? Yeah, so I'm building a gaming company in particular ed tech. So after being on this couple, things are changing now. I'm starting to pivot slightly from talking with different customers. And but I'm assuming there's no home options or games. Does that make sense?
No one's ever asked me that before. What's the game? Is it a simple game or a complex game?
So basically, from teaching plumbing in colleges, I realised that these young kids cannot retain information and they see interested. So I asked my class one day, to tell me your FIFA 11 team. They told me every intricacy you could ever imagine, but they couldn't tell me what a plumbing fixing was, you know. So I thought I'd go gamify theory in colleges. So here's where the idea was born. But now it's sort of becoming something the couple accelerated a minute and talking to all these different schools, teachers, heads of departments. What I'm learning is that the problem lies in the transition between secondary school to college, because they go through tests, they go through teach, test, repeat, teach. So they go from this machine in the schools. It's like traditional, educational way of learning. They go to college like, whoa, hang on, what, I can smoke, I can do whatever I want, I'm not interested. So now I want to try and change my idea to a more universal, agnostic game, where basically the teaching on year 11, if the college students can type in the syllabus and they gamify the way through the qualification, so they'll do their English way, and then when they transition into colleges, they'll be doing the same learning methods, so sort of the level 1 something courses in that eventually. So it's hard, but I'm trying to. I've got a college in the Netherlands who I'm working with at the minute, with the third year degree students. They basically take a live customer, and then with that live customer, they get to actually share experience and then either grow with that customer or you can say, I've got this experience, this is what I've done. And then you can, it comes to them, and they only take on ethical projects and they love mine. So we're sort of looking at the minute, it's been about 13 grand in quotas to build this MVP in terms of a level, a sign-on for tutors, a sign-on for students, and then it won't be all the stuff initially. It'll just be a web browser-based idea to prove to the investors and the customers who want it. The school will think it's brilliant, but it's all beyond it. It's just, I need money. I need money to build it. And that's kind of where I am.
Well, you need to prove out that the kids would actually learn more from it, then the schools would want it, and then you prove that the schools want it, and then you take that to investors, and then you should be fine. In terms of no-code game design, it depends on the kind of games you want to make, really. I know the Unreal Engine is no-code, but I don't know how far you want to go with that. Is it as simple as, board games, maybe? But then again, it depends upon what you're trying to build. But with these no-code tools, the ones that I use, Bubble and Flutterflow, these things are really good user interfaces that can help people sign into things and then input their data and then plug into an API to do whatever the service would be. But in terms of game design, I've never really come across that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so I've been doing the Unity Academy and stuff, like thinking myself, I've taught myself etc. And I've done that because then when I'm in with these technical big examples, the wall of my eyes. So now I'm all the people are on about and we're talking about, which is good. But like I say, I don't see anything in the gaming. If you want to go into it together, so it's building no-code gaming.
Well, the Unreal Engine is actually no-code. So that it means it's sort of heading in that direction. But obviously, building a game is a very complex thing.
Yeah, it's massively, I know. There's a lot of things, so I basically need to, what happened since being on this program with Mike, which is amazing, by the way. I'm learning so much. I didn't know. This is my first time, right, doing anything like this. And I never thought I'd see myself doing anything like this, to be fair. But anyway, here we go. And so, it's kind of, and they need to be universal so that every single syllabus can be applied to it. So all the teachers that can do is, once they've got the lesson plans, they know their outcomes, they know what they've got to teach, and then basically they'll type it in to it, and then the games will be built. So then the questions will be within the navigation of the game if we're free to sort of know the answer invalidated, they take the knowledge in. I'm going to jump in, Mike, quickly, right? I think you're overcomplicating it and you're walking, walking before you can crawl, or maybe even trying to
boil the ocean. That's
Look, all you need to do at this stage of Catapult is go out there and prove that you can fucking sell. That's all that I care about. You don't need to build jack shit. And excuse my French, right? And this guy, I say it because it's so important. All of you guys need to listen to this. So many of you are over obsessed about the product and the features and all of this, all singing, all dancing, bells jingling nonsense. Forget about that. You do not yet need to deliver. And kind of like Tom was saying earlier, even if it is something as simple as a ticket to an event, prove that you can sell that ticket before you even need to do the event. You don't need to have the event on the back end to sell a ticket or to simulate a purchase with a button click. You should not, Mike Bateson, need to be worried about 15 grand for a flipping prototype, because every single one of your clients is worth more than 15 grand. You could sell one client and that'll pay for your prototype. So you don't need to worry about raising investment. How do you do that though without having your products to show? So how would I say, here, grab them on? I can't give you all. Finish Catapult, basically. And then, yeah, dude, it's all there. It's all there, 100%. Mate,
if you can really focus on what the value that it is that you're providing to the person that's going to end up being an economic buyer, you really prove to them it's possible and get them to commit to buying it, then you've got something that you can then show to an investor, like a letter of intent. Then you can get the money off them. Building something first, it sounds like the thing that you're trying to build is so large that and also you're not 100% sure what you're building because it's so large. You'd end up spending a lot of money on something unfocused. So really figure out what it is you're trying to make first, and then go to the economic buyer and figure out what it is they want and what it actually is they want, and then get a commitment from them. You need to build things.
All right. Cheers, Tom. Mike, I'm going to hang up, but hoping you can stay here. Cool. Tom, if you've got time for one more question, I know we're a bit over.
Yeah, I do. That's fine.
All right. Cheers, mate. We've got Jess, who's one of
Thank you. So my question is, like I've actually pivoted. So, but what I was originally going to do, I've already got customers for it, but to build it is like as a mobile app, it's really expensive. To do it as a web app, it's a lot cheaper, but it's still quite big. So to do a no code, so
what is it going to be? Can I ask?
There's it was an on-demand massage app. But instead of booking in time slots, the customers would go in a queue. So there'd be 1, 2, 3. And whenever they've finished that first massage, they go to the next one. And the massage isn't like a set amount of time. It could be 10 minutes. It could be 10 hours. It's whenever the therapist has stopped. So it's really important for them to like time that massage. And trying to find something with like a timer function with that queue system as well was quite difficult. So I guess what my question is even, like in WordPress, you can, it's like drag and drop but you can still put some hard code in and customize it. Is that possible with some of these like no code?
Yeah. So on the tool called Flutterflow, underneath it is the language Flutter. So you design it in a no-code way, but you get the code coming out at the end. So it's fully customizable.
Is that only on Flutter though?
Only the language Flutter, yeah. There's one for React Native called DraftBit, but it's just not developed at the moment.
What if I was to make, because these are both mobile apps, what if I was to make it because doing a web app is a lot cheaper than a mobile app, isn't it? So finding a developer for a web app.
You need to, really, because in theory you're still coding something similar. It's just the mobile app's on a smaller screen. It's just publishing onto the Android, the Apple Store and the Android Store. That's the only difference, really.
Yeah. And then because the web apps are still mobile, should still be mobile friendly, shouldn't they?
Yep.
So, because when I used to put a lot of when I was doing the app before, I did have it all built, but it's all gone tits up. Apple, because like I was in the gaming industry, the amount of hoops I had to jump through with certain things with Apple was a lot more difficult to get to pass than it was for like Android, for example. And web apps, I don't think you don't have those kind of issues.
No, you don't have to give them commission if you sell it because it's already on.
No, it's even like for example, where we were doing poker games, I would hide the address. Apple would say you can't hide the address, it has to be public. But for us, we had to hide the address because obviously you got people walking out with thousands of pounds worth of cash. So you can't have that address public. So there was like these kind of things that Apple would reject the app from being uploaded on the store. But anyway, I guess that's kind of irrelevant. I guess what my thing is now I'm not really building the app because I'm pivoting to offices. So my MVP technically is a whiteboard that you put your name on, but there's still a demand for this app in the gaming industry. People want it. And I'm just thinking if there's a way I can slowly start building it, knowing that I can eventually put that timer functionality in it, because that's what's most important, recording the therapist's times and their earnings from that from that
Okay.
time.
So what stage are you at with this? Because if it's a proof of concept, what's the concept you're trying to prove? Is it that people would want this app? Then you just create a whiteboard. If you're doing an MVP, you want to prove that people would actually log on, give their details to then get it, and then you'll be looking at a timer. Do you actually go to an MVP?
I already built this app and used it in the industry, and then COVID happened, and then I added things, and now the app is just a big, massive mess. So I've got to restart again, basically.
Languages.
It was React Native, and but now it's it has been validated. Everybody wants it, but nobody wants it as me supplying the therapist. They kind of want it as a white label app. So that means changing the whole build of everything anyway, because I've now got to make it so that they all have their own admin accounts rather than me being admin and supplying the therapist. So the concept is in demand. It's wanted everywhere. It's just the build is going to have to be different. So they want their own version of the app. Does that make sense?
Sounds like a marketplace in a way.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's changed now from a service to like a marketplace. So I'll be offering them the tool basically to organize and schedule their own therapists. So I'll be selling them the tool rather than supplying a service. That's what.
That's fine. We're building a tool for a client on Flutterflow right now, which is a marketplace. We have 2 user types, or 3 user types. There's the admin, the overall admin, the company owners, and then there's people who would they're buyers and sellers on the platform, and that's somewhat similar to you. And then we haven't done a white label, so that if you log in and you're with a specific user, you'd see their branding, but that is possible. And then a timer, that's something that could be coded in as well.
And are you doing that on on the Flutter?
We're doing our Flutterflow, and that's a web app.
That's a web app.
Yep.
Okay.
But that's a tool that is more designed for mobile apps. So we could make a mobile app out of it, quite simple. There's another one we're doing for influencers, and we're building an app and a dashboard, web app and a mobile app within the same database, same tool.
So would
yes.
you recommend I use Flutterflow?
I would, because I use it, but if you've got everything in React, it's worth
Well,
it.
so the guys, my developers that are they said that they quoted me like just over $300 to update, because it's all old like code, and they said to update all the plugins it'd be over $300. I said yes, amazing, let's do it. And then they've gone, oh no, now it's going to be over $3,000. And I'm just like, like I left these guys just before COVID for a reason, and now I'm remembering why, because it just kept you just never, there was no transparency on where you stood. Do you know what I mean? It always feels like. So I'm kind of reluctant, because I can't show anyone the demo of the app or let them use it, and nobody wants to pay for it until they're using it. So for $300 it was worth it, but for over $3,000, it's like flushing money down the drain. Do you know what I mean? I don't see why I would do that just to show someone it's working when I've got to build it all again for the white labeling anyway. So it now seems like a waste of money to do.
If you can get the commitments from everyone, because you say that everyone wants it, if you can actually show that, then you could go to an investor. Or if you've got 100 people say that want to use it, then, if you've got 100 people that want to use it, I'd find $3,000 from somewhere. But then obviously you've got the problem of having to trust them. So do you start again? That's it's sort of all up to you, really. But like a project like that would cost $10,000 to our agency.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think I'll get 100 people from that. So that's not the path of least resistance for me. The path of least resistance is through the offices, which isn't, I don't need a big MVP like that. Does that make sense? So that's why I'm kind of like, maybe I can do it with no code, where it's doesn't cost much, but is it worth it?
I'm going to jump in, Jess, just because I know both ideas that you're talking about. Forget about the gaming one for now. Just focus 100% on the office space one. Get that done and see if that works. If it doesn't, you can fall back on gaming. But I think if you
well, the reason I was asking is because that flow of the app can actually be used in both. It can be used in both. It's just right now for offices, I don't need it. I would only need it for gaming.
So go out, follow the path of least resistance, make sales, revenue, ideally profit from the office space, and then if you want, pump that back into
so now the guys that are waiting for this other app that I said I could get done, that now my developers are, shall I just tell them that it's not going to be done in time for their event, and that
how much pay you?
Well, do you remember this guy said he'd give me, I only asked for 50% of 1 month, which was 50 quid basically. And then he laughed at me and said he'd just give me that. He was going to ask for a few grand. So
50 quid.
Yeah.
You're only going to get 50 quid. It's not really worth.
Yeah.
It's just not meaningful, right? You can let down one customer, you could let down probably 10 customers in that space, and it doesn't really matter. Look, I'm just super conscious of time. We've kept on for ages. Dolly does have her hand up.
Yeah.
Dolly, ask your question, and then we can see if Tom's got time to answer it.
I do. Well,
okay, hi, Tom. Hi.
Right.
Yes. So my question is, I would like to build a buy now, pay later platform, but specifically for cosmetic procedures. So aside from customer discovery call, I'm trying to figure out the best way to validate my idea. So I was thinking, could I use a landing page with Facebook ads to collect emails? Or do you think it's better for me to build a community, for example, on Discord, for example? In your opinion, what do you think?
Well, if you were to build a community, would you build the community around buy now, pay later, or around the cosmetics?
Around cosmetic procedures, and just as I'm building the app, so that when the app is launched or the website is launched, then I could let them know that, okay, the website is launched now, you can go sign up.
I wouldn't build a community, because if you're building a community around cosmetics, that all you're proving is that people want to get together and talk about cosmetics. You're not really proving that people will use a buy now, pay later service. If you were to run an ad saying offering buy now, pay later service, that would directly prove whether people want to use it.
So you think the landing page is the best way to validate?
It's nice if you had a community of 1,000 people, you could ask them questions, but people won't join the community for the purpose of your buy now, pay later idea. They'll do it because cosmetics. So you're not really proving anything by, you're just creating a nice audience for yourself, which is great. And that helps.
Yeah.
But you're not really proving anything.
All right. Okay. And with the landing page, it's okay if I use ads, right? To drive people to the landing page, like Facebook ads and Instagram ads. All right. Okay. Thank you. That's my question.
All it does, if you create a landing page and an ad, the paid ads behind it, you're just injecting a bit of fuel into it.
Okay.
But
okay.
If you do when I'll pay later, you could probably find like a white label provider for that. Because if I tried to make something in finance and open banking, all of that requires a lot of legislation and it's a nightmare. So try and piggyback as much as you can on someone else's legislations.
Okay. Okay, thanks for answering my question.
No worries at all.
All right. Thank you, Tom, so much. And
No worries.
I think that we ran over a little bit, but really, really appreciate your time. Any sort of final last words or anything you want to tell us?
I hope it helped. That's all. If you want anything built, find me on LinkedIn and we can have a chat about it. But I just hope it helped. If you've got any questions, just message me on LinkedIn. More than happy to help.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to shut the recording off and then I will shut the call down. I'll see you all on the platform. Cheers, guys.
Brilliant. Cheers, guys.